Now turn on.
Unmute.
Unmute, yeah. Unmute and we want to see everybody.
So, like that? Perfect. Okay. Welcome to the morning meditation. So, let's all begin with 5 minutes of either surrender or inquiry, whatever you want. to share any of their experience either in that last 5 minutes or in your last day or two of meditating?
Hi, Akilesh. Michael here.
Hello.
I had a speech experience.
Oh, you're kind of cutting in and out. Sorry, could you repeat that, please? Yeah, it's a little bit. Keep going. It's still a little choppy, but I'll try to understand.
Thanks. So when doing self-inquiry, I'm trying to feel the sense of I,
Mm-hmm.
and then what I'm doing it when it arises, it's getting more subtle and subtle. I'm just kind of negating it because it's not me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not explicitly saying the notice. I'm just kind of invoking I and then taking and just continuing that trajectory. I'm just curious.
Unfortunately, shoot, a lot of your sentence fell away. So I heard, this is what I heard. I heard you're negating the I, and then that's kind of it. And you're curious about something.
Okay, let me turn on. Okay, maybe this will be clear.
Oh yes, this is definitely clearer. Yes, whatever this is. Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, sorry about that. So what I was saying is, I'm feeling the sense of I, and that's getting subtler and subtler.
Uh-huh.
And as I'm feeling the subtle sense of I, I'm kind of immediately negating it and
Okay.
just dismissing it because it's not me, because it's an object. So I'm not explicitly saying, who knows this. I'm just kind of invoking and then negating instantly and going further and further into what I can find as the most subtle sense of I.
Yeah, great.
So I'm curious.
That's perfect. That's better. I mean, yeah, these questions, these verbal questions are only props. You don't need them at all, and you will, in fact, dispense with them as you were doing. So that's perfect. That's great.
Okay, great. And
Yeah.
this continuous subtle negation process, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, yes, you can view it that way. Yes, it's a continual seeking process, which is, exactly along, it is on one side of the coin a seeking process, and the other side of the coin a negating process. Yes. But yeah, don't lose sight of the fact that you are hunting whatever, like you said very correctly, the subtlest sense of I to which you still have access, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'll share.
Hi.
Hi. I remember in one of your old videos you said something to the effect of whatever needs to happen will happen in
Yeah.
terms of surrender.
In terms of what now?
In terms of surrender.
Yes.
And whenever I'm getting stuck in something, I try to remind myself that even if I'm stuck in thoughts, they need to happen. Is that right?
Yeah, certainly that is true, actually, 100%, yes. Everything that happens is essentially God's will. You can definitely, it's correct, actually, yes. I'm sure I was probably saying that with respect to somebody who was afraid that, if they practiced surrender, or inquiry for that matter, that whatever needed to happen in life wouldn't happen, basically. And I was suggesting that whatever needed to happen in life would happen, but of course we may not know what it is that needs to happen. And our conception of what needs to happen may not be what actually needs to happen. But yeah, actually, yes, you're right. The truth is whatever thoughts you get lost in also need to happen. And that's a very useful way of thinking about it when you do lose the surrender, say, okay, and you are absorbed in a thought, and then you come back and like, oh my God, whatever, I was not practicing the last 2 hours or 2 days or 2 weeks or whatever it was. The reality is, it's useful to note that, but also that too is a thought, and it can be surrendered. That's the thought of time. Thought of time having passed without you having done the practice is a thought too. So, useful to a certain degree in as much as it might tell you what your attachments are, or why did I get lost, what was going on there that made practice so difficult. That's useful to think about. But then beyond that, you can just dismiss it. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Sure. All right, let's go to a round of 5 minutes. Surrender or inquiry, whatever you like. All right. Anyone want to talk about their experience?
Yeah, I noticed a lot more, well, probably, yeah, anxiety planning for the day. My mind's busier in the morning. And I also noticed quite a bit of insecurity. Somehow I'm just noticing more of those, how can I say, like, you know, for lack of a better word, you know, I don't read much, like, just ego's busier in the morning, and it's a little bit more difficult to let go, because I feel like I have to be on top of things, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I think a lot of people find that to be the case, because in the morning you're supposed to do all these tasks and get ready for your day and all of this. But it's good that you're noticing them, and you're good noticing as well, like you said, various insecurity type thoughts that are there. All valuable information, actually. So yeah. Just keep what you were surrendering or inquiring?
Surrendering.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, inquiry for some reason, it almost feels a little bit, how can I say, like too, it's not organic enough for me.
Okay, that's totally fine. I mean, people tend to be inclined more to one or the other. So if you feel surrender clicks with you better, then that's fine. Just do surrender. That's totally fine. Surrender is full, complete, and sufficient in itself. So that's great.
Yeah. And also I noticed when I was lost in thoughts, actually it's not lost in phenomena, you know. I realized I actually enjoyed it, but I also realized that I was at mercy of that because it just happened to be the thoughts that were pleasant. You know?
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
So there's some, I felt effortless, right? It just like, after having practiced, you know, different things, you know, being effortless felt really good, but at the same time I also realized it's just because I was like lucky, you know, and happened that the thoughts were just really, you know, I was at a place where I just felt effortless. During this practice, I feel like I constantly have to exert effort. So at one moment, I just wasn't, you know, just like, that feels so easy, but at the same time, I was also like, just, you know, happened to be enjoying thoughts, you know?
Yeah, see, it's interesting, this effort point, right? Because, you know, I talk about willpower, not exerting willpower as a condition of surrender. But obviously, when you're sitting here, it doesn't seem like you're doing anything physical, at least, and probably none of your usual tasks, even mentally, except, you know, whatever thoughts you're experiencing. So where is the question of effort? Well, it's interesting because, there's effort in there is effort in keeping the practice going, but it's interesting because when you're lost in thought, you are subtly focused on that thought. That focus which you're using is like the effort of your attention, actually. You don't even notice it because it's so habitual. But the effort of the practice, by contrast, I mean, it's also a focusing effort in a way, but it's focusing on relaxing that focusing muscle, at least in surrender. So that that's only effortful because you're so habitually focused on thought. So there's a subtle effort. You see, anytime one is lost in any thought, there's a subtle effort that's there. That may not feel like really an effort, but it's there to lock in on that thought. We do it habitually. And the effort of surrender is to try to unwind that habit. Because it's become so habitual, it requires constant vigilance to keep the focusing muscle unfocused. Yeah, just to let you know, so those are two kinds of effort, right? I know getting lost in thought feels effortless, but the reality is there is, in fact, a subtle effort being employed. And when you do surrender long enough, eventually it will become clear to you that, oh yeah, what I thought was effortlessly getting lost in thought involves a subtle effort.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. That's really helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else want to share their experience?
Hello.
Hi.
I'm from India, and I hope you will be able to understand my accent.
Oh, I think I can. I can understand it.
Okay. So, when I inquire, what happens, my total attention gets focused on breathing.
Okay.
And my mind doesn't oscillate. It just keeps on noticing the breath, and I can even hear my heartbeat also.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I'm too, my attention totally focused on breathing, and breathing start getting shorter and shorter and shorter. It subsides in a kind of lower belly, and sometimes for a split of a second my breathing stops, and but I'm conscious at that time that my breathing has stopped.
Okay.
And at that time there's no thought as such, but awareness is very much there. And then breathing starts, and then the thought also comes again. My attention is on breathing, and it is not this inquiry is not through words as such. I understand the question, who am I, but it is not I'm asking. It's there. It's there in the consciousness, and I'm totally focused on my breathing. So my breathing in between stops. So I don't know whether it is what's happening. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, look, breath can certainly change in response to the way that the thought changes. When thought becomes quieter, breath often also becomes deeper. Like you say, sometimes it can stop. But with inquiry, it would be preferable, if you can, to try to focus not on the breath, but to focus on the hunt for who's watching the breath. I am watching the breath. Well, the I that watches the breath, where is that I? I know that I'm watching the breath. Well, where is that knowledge? What is that knowledge? And you needn't, as we've already mentioned, and you just mentioned also, you needn't use the words if you don't want to. In fact, really, the words can be tossed away, absolutely. They're unnecessary. But the point is that you're trying to point your attention towards whatever I is, rather than toward any particular object, like, let's say, your breath, for example. But nevertheless, as you hunt I, your breath may very well change. So that's very common. So that's not a problem. But I would suggest try to turn your focus towards actively seeking the one who is noticing all these changes.
Okay, thanks.
Sure, you're welcome.
So,
Tell me.
yeah, so like as you said, the focus of intense search of who is enjoying this silence, so like makes the breath go too much.
It can, well, yeah, it can alter you, it can change your breath. Yeah.
And it becomes intense also.
It can be, yes.
And but like me, you know, like I do not try to, I do not put effort on avoiding any thoughts, you know, and then
Yes.
let the thoughts be floating or anything. But I don't. But my focus is more on like who is observing. I am enjoying the silence, and then who is observing the
Yeah,
silence.
exactly.
And then who is observing the silence becomes more intense, I think, that thought. Because of that, I feel like breathless.
Yeah, right. So you're so focused on this question of who is observing the silence that your breath stops for a bit.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah, breath is becoming too much.
Or becomes a lot. You're short breaths.
Or you feel that the pressure in the heart or something.
Yeah,
like that.
yeah.
Then I say, how come I'm not even focusing on any of these other thoughts? Lots of thoughts some thoughts might be there, but I do not even. They exist as just like a surrounding thing. I don't even care.
Yeah.
Just
No,
like,
well, because you're focused on the hunt. So focusing on the hunt can also change your.
because of my hunt, you know, like I feel deep emotion.
Yes.
Then I say, how come this deep emotion coming up? That's because my hunt is intense.
Yeah, no, that's right. I mean, that's right. So emotions come up, and again, it doesn't matter what they are, right? Because you're focused on who's aware of the emotions.
Yeah.
Right. Good. That's great. Yeah. Let them come, because whatever is in there, let it arise. It doesn't matter. You know, it can rise and fall. Whatever phenomena happen during this, right? Whatever emotions happen, whatever breathing patterns change, or if there are other phenomena that you experience, like lights or sounds or changes in space and time, all those things can happen. Those are all just further thoughts. So what's important is what's aware of them. What's aware of them, to be laser focused on that question. Yeah, that's right, exactly.
Related to that, so when I'm focusing or meditating or surrendering, I hear the inner sound or the sound current. Is that a thought?
Yeah, whatever you experience, see, the basic thing is anything that you experience, in other words, anything, that has a beginning and an end.
It doesn't seem like it does have a beginning and an end.
Well, it's, if you weren't aware of it a second ago and now you're aware of it, then it has a beginning and an end. Yeah, so.
So how do I work with that or use that to move forward in this process? Do you have any tips for that?
Well, sure, because who's aware of that sound current?
Okay.
That's it, simple as that. Yeah, that's it. It's just, like a dog chasing something. It's just that continuous, can't be distracted. Whatever happens, just turn towards who's who. And again, you don't need the word, but the point is the intention. Because you're here observing every change, including senses of I don't know, blocks, voids, walls, impasses, call it what you want. These are all phenomena. And again, you're present to them. So that's what you're focused on. Okay, let's do another round of 5 minutes. So I'll note something, which I think is always worth keeping in mind, which is that when one does the practice, it doesn't necessarily feel like anything. So, of course we want experiences of peace, and, that will happen over time. But in any particular moment, one's mind may not be peaceful. That does not mean that you're not doing inquiry or surrender correctly. What matters is, am I putting in the effort to stay focused on either the hunt for I or ignoring everything, basically? The actual feeling in the mind is another thought, whatever it may be, whether it's a stormy feeling or a peaceful feeling. So just keep that in mind. Don't judge success of the method by whether you feel good or not, basically. Anyone want to share their experience for the last few minutes? Or have any questions about it?
Yeah, I have a question. In traditional Vedanta, they talk a lot about devotion and reverence and ishvara. And I was wondering, with this surrender practice, sometimes I feel inclined or impelled to kind of surrender with reverence.
Yeah.
Or does it feel like I'm giving up everything to this greater universal intelligence, or whatever you want to call it?
Yes.
I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's lovely. Yes, so surrender is very much a, compatible with and coming from these paths of devotion and bhakti. So, to surrender to God or higher power is, it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing. It is, if you feel so inclined, please do that. So, God certainly is nothing other than the self and will help those who pray to God. So, feel free to do that, absolutely. It is anyhow, whether or not one does view it that way, it is in fact the greatest sacrifice to the divine. So, yes. Reverence and devotion to God is and viewing surrender as that is it's a good thing.
Okay, great. Thanks for that.
Sure.
And Akilesh, regarding the comment you made just now, thanks for the clarification that a stormy mind versus a peaceful mind when we practice either of these techniques.
Yes.
So that gave really a good, we are not always expected to be in the peaceful mind. Right?
Exactly.
Like we are in stormy mind.
That's right.
So that is a great clarification for our practice. So thank you for giving.
Oh, you're very welcome. Yes.
So according to whatever you commented, either it is a stormy mind then or a peaceful mind, we should stick to our technique of surrender or self-inquiry.
Yes, exactly. That's right.
Okay.
Because the idea that it's stormy or peaceful, both those ideas. It's stormy or it's peaceful. I'm unhappy or I'm happy, right? I'm blissful or I'm not blissful, right? Any of those are all thoughts. All of them are thoughts.
Yes.
So they can feed right back into the practice, either who is aware of this feeling of storminess or peace, or ignore. This is another thought, I don't care, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question on ignoring emotions. I was really good at it, and I ignored, denied, suppressed, I did all of that without knowing I did that. But I also suffered some, a lot of consequences. So I ended, trying to get in touch, doing the work, trying to get in touch with my emotions and all that, and trying to see what my emotions are telling me and things like that. So now when emotions show up, I tend to, I have difficulty letting go of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not quite sure what's the difference between what I did in the past, which I just ignore. I didn't want to deal with emotion. And now I surrender, my emotions. What's the difference?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this up because this is perhaps a problem, and I maybe need to find a different word. I usually tend to clarify it when I say it the first time at least, but when I say ignore emotion, I definitely do not mean suppressing them or pushing them out of awareness. So the emotions are there, right? What surrender means is I am going to not allow them to be the center of my primary focus, basically, right? So the focusing instrument is being relaxed. But that doesn't mean that the emotions are being pushed out. We're not pushing them out, we're admitting them. Whatever emotions are there, they're welcome, whether they be positive or negative emotions. So that's very different, it sounds like, than what you did, because you said when I was younger I suppressed and repressed. Very different. Here we're permitting, like the sky permits everything inside. That doesn't mean that we're necessarily focusing on it, but it's certainly allowed without problem. Now, the second thing I'll say is, like I usually talk about very often, people do have lots of psychological stuff, and if one needs to deal with that psychological stuff, quote unquote, at its own level, meaning that one stops the practice and identifies with the mind and the body, even though it's an illusion to do that, and then, whatever, let's say, tries to understand what's going on with themselves emotionally, or goes to therapy or something like that, that's totally fine, right? So if you feel like you need to do that, then do that. Third thing I'll say is, along these lines is, when one does the practice, the mind and the body are actually capable of doing everything by themselves. And that, when I say everything, that includes, by the way, dealing with the emotions. So one can do the practice, and the mind and the body can, by themselves, deal with the emotions if one permits them to, or if one lets go, basically, if one lets go. But nevertheless, it may feel as if they can't, and you might need to step away and deal with things, like I say, on the psychological level, identifying with the mind and the body, and if you do that, that's fine. But I just want to note that, yes, if one goes deep into the practice, then one's actions take on a spontaneous quality, and that spontaneity can include dealing with the emotions in whatever way, right? So yeah, does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you so much for all those 3 points.
Okay.
That you mentioned. And I also realized earlier when I said that you asked me whether I did inquiry or surrender, I said inquiry didn't feel organic. Actually, I noticed that I didn't like inquiry because when I say, where is I, or, it's almost like, well, it's not almost like, it's like when I ask a question like that, then that I becomes an object.
Mm-hmm.
So I just don't like that. It's just like when I becomes an object, it's almost like what's the point of doing this,
Right. Well, right, and I hear you. And again, if surrender works for you, that's great. But I will just note, right, so, it's interesting because in inquiry, it's, what we're looking for is, again, I like to say this, right, we're not looking directly for the true self. We're looking for what feels like us. And so when we look like that, you're right, in a sense we are kind of objectifying the I, in a sense. but we're also simultaneously negating all the objects that come up because we reject them. That's because the ego occupies a position that the ego, which is what we're looking for, what feels like us, so it feels like the searcher, occupies a position on the weird border between subject and object. It's like the dividing line. So, it's neither exactly an object nor exactly a subject, or it's a kind of, I like to call it a subject object. Anyway, the point is, it is, we're hunting for it because it's what we feel like we are. That's why we're hunting for it, basically. And when we do prolong that hunt intensely, then it turns out not to be what we thought it was, basically. But yeah, anyway, if you don't feel like doing it, don't do it. Just do surrender. But yeah, it's there's a reason for the attempted so-called objectification of the self. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Very helpful. Thank you.
Feels like I'm in this process all the time. So sometimes seems like there is a progress. I can be beyond the fabric of all these moments, not like a consistent long periods. And then I go right back into becoming or connecting with whatever emotions, thoughts, and various while the observation and inquiry is there, sometimes there is a lot of clarity and detachment.
Yeah.
Many times I just weave in and out through this. It feels like there is not much progress, but I can see it. When there is a progress, when there is a clarity, there is a lot of progress.
Yeah, right.
So that's what
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, so again, right, it's good that you are feeling like this is going on all the time, because that is in fact, that is the way progress is. Attempted doing of this all the time. In your foreground attention, right? Your main attention, the best part of your mind, the sharpest part of your mind on this practice, one or the other of these practices. And it would be useful for you to note, right? Where the difficulties are. Where does your mind, in what situations, in what context does your mind tend to wander away from the practice, right? Start to note those things, because that is a map, to some extent, of your attachments. Another thing I'll say is, when there is a quieter mind, and when there is more clarity, right? That's when to, redouble your efforts in the practice, because you know that, right down the line, something else is going to come and disrupt you, right? So, hold on to those moments when your mind is quieter and it's easier to do the practice, basically, because they will defend you better against the moments when it's more chaotic. So, because people have a tendency to, oh yeah, I feel good now. Now, relax. They relax the vigilance, they relax the practice, and then boom, suddenly they're invaded, right? That's what usually happens. So it's very natural, exactly. This up and down process is very natural. If you notice the contexts in which more problems happen, you can prepare for them better. You can also see if there's psychological work that needs to be done. It's always in the background of everything I say, that people do have a lot of psychological stuff. Most people have psychological stuff they need to deal with one way or the other. So anyway, so I'll just put that out there.
But there is no separation between practice, living, non-practice. It's like a 24/7 inquiry. Of course, sometimes it becomes difficult.
Yeah.
That's when I got caught up in the stuff.
Yeah.
And it feels like days pass. But it is a continuous process. There is no...
Good. There's a continuous attempt anyway, right? Yeah, good. That's really good. Exactly. That's exactly what you want. Precisely. What stops you is, what stops everybody, which is which is remaining attachments. That's always the barrier, always the block. So to notice what those are, and you know, and then perhaps take action depending on what they are exactly. You know, that's you know, the inquiry is hard because we are attached to certain outcomes, obviously, and we think we are in control of the outcomes, which we're not. We're not in control. If we really accepted we're not in control, suddenly that would be so much freedom. But we're very, very attached to the idea that we're in control, that I can make a difference, you know, but you can't. Except with the practice, you can make a difference in the practice. So yeah, that's great.
Akilesh, during the last 4-5 days during our sessions, many times, like we discussed about how to keep our practices not only during normal times but also during chaotic days, like either emotional or physical. So, can you just explain more on how to prepare for these kind of things? Is it like journaling, or is it like seeing where our attachments go? Are some of the things I'm thinking, but what is exactly?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of ways to deal with it depending on what the exact issues are, right? So, I mean, everything's very specific, really, in a way, to what your particular issues are. But what I probably was saying was something like, look, you know, just for a simple example, if you know that, you know, I don't know, meeting with some particular family member stresses you out, right? And immediately you're going to go into some kind of mode where, you know, your mind, you know, jumps into thought and loses the practice, right? If you know that that's the case, and you know you're going to be meeting with this family member in 2 hours, right? Then you can mentally hold the practice before this meeting, right? And try, right? I know it's going to be hard. I know I'm going to be attacked by emotion and thought in 30 seconds when I walk into that room, right? So knowing that, you can try your best to hold on, like anticipating, like, oh, it's going to feel really difficult very, very soon, right? So that kind of thing. That's probably what I was saying. Yeah. And so if you notice, right, these patterns, like, okay, I know in this situation, with my kids, you know, they really drive me up the wall under certain circumstances or whatever, you know, like these kinds of things, right? So being aware of when it's going to get difficult, that's probably what I was suggesting. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But there are a lot of other things that can be done that can be about, you know, dealing with the attachments in their own way. Like, I mean, again, I can say at their own level. So for example, right, like, you know, if you were noticing that, like, oh, I feel really bad on the days when I eat too much sugar or something like that, you know, just as an example, right? Like, okay, well, maybe if you can, it would be good to decrease the amount of sugar you eat then, just as an example, if it's not too difficult for you to do that, you know? So there's different ways of dealing with it, but what I probably meant was preparation when you know the situation is going to be difficult, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, let's do one last round of 5 minutes. Yeah. Here we go. All right, anyone want to talk about their experience? All right, well, we'll just leave it in silence then, and I'll see you, all of you, or some of you, hopefully tomorrow. So take care, okay?
And today evening is also.
And today evening, of course, that's right.
Five.
You have insurance. Okay, thank you all for coming. You got a WhatsApp call, by the way.